Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for your prayer and support over these last, maybe 6 weeks or so since I last sent out an update. The last email that you got was I was on my way to Puerto Rico, and me and a coworker, Gino, we were there setting up a trip for a team from Biola University. And what our ministry does, Youth Missions International, is we train and equip church groups, leaders to live and share their faith where they are and where they go. And so Biola University, we send about between 2 and 4 teams a year, domestically or internationally, to a location to work with, serve, and support the local church or missionary there for the work that they're already doing. So me and Gino, we went to Puerto Rico to connect with a church there that Gino had a relationship with starting maybe 7 years ago. And when we got there, we were just so encouraged by the impact, the love, the support, the presence of the church there that we were working with. Really what happened was we arrived at about midnight into San Juan, Puerto Rico, and we went straight out to a late dinner with the associate pastor, the youth pastor, and also a youth leader. We went out to Denny's. It was a 24-hour Denny's there. So we had a super late dinner there, and we were there for about 2 hours and just loved the conversation that we had. What we heard from Pastor Jared, the youth pastor, was when we asked them, do you want a team to help you with what you're already doing? His response was, I don't know what we're doing. We're not sure what we're doing. So what they did as a church after we asked that question was they did a SWOT analysis. They determined their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what they came up with was that they are lacking in evangelism training and outreach. And so he said, I want those things for our church. Can you help us with that? And that's exactly what we do. Training leaders to share their faith where they are and where they go. So it was super exciting to know the level of maybe self-awareness that this church had and has. And that conversation was just super eye-opening because we were able to share our heart as a ministry to Pastor Jared and his youth leader there. The rest of the time, we got there on a Tuesday night. Wednesday and Thursday were really spent with being with different people from the church. We were hanging out with the head of the deacons. He told us about the history of the church. We spent time with the senior pastor and heard of his vision for the church and the time that he's spent there and what the culture of the church is like now. We met with the leader of the office manager. Even though she's also the one that is kind of like the accountant. And when we met with her, she had already pulled up our ministry's website and knew about us and what we do. And so she had already had questions for us as a part of that conversation. It was a lot of fun to be able to connect with them. And we also hung out with Pastor Jared and his family Went over their house. They have 3 wonderful kids, twin 9-year-olds, and then a 7-year-old. They were a blast. And the next day, we had planned what we call a cultural experience. Whenever we whenever we send a team to a country, before that, there needs to be a pre-trip or a setup trip. So that's what we were doing there. When we go there to a different culture, domestically or internationally, we want the team going there to not be a burden to the people that they're serving. And also, we want that team to be able to see and do and taste and have experience of the things that the locals are doing, not to have this mission experience where they're in a 5-star hotel and then during the day and afternoons they're serving the least of these and then they go back to their 5-star hotel. That's not what our ministry is about. So that's why we wanted to spend time with a bunch of people from the church, to hear from them, to see them, to meet them, to hear their heart. And so the time that we got to spend with Jared and his family was really rewarding, because we experienced a crazy amount of love and family, brotherhood through Christ that was very encouraging. One of the things we did for our cultural experience is we went to this, it used to be a dam near, I think it's near Arecibo in Puerto Rico, and it had rained a lot that season or time or week or whatever it was. It had rained a lot. And so when we got there, we knew that we had to leave all of our stuff in the vehicle in order to walk up the river. And there's no sidewalks, there's no trails, there's no paths. And so we just left everything and waded through the river upstream, got to the beautiful place where it used to be a working dam, but now it's been sort of abandoned, and now it's turned into a waterfall. It's super beautiful, and we spent time there praying, talking about ministry and mission and what that looks like. And then we went back to the vehicle, and our plan was to go to a local beach there in Arecibo to maybe for like a half hour. We were going to go and swim and then head back to where we were staying in near San Juan. It's called Guaynabo, where the church is. And so me and Gino and the Pastor Jared and his family and 2 other youth leaders were there with us, and we were having a blast. We left our stuff on the sand, and we were in the ocean for maybe a half hour. And then I come back to where we left our stuff on the sand, and me and Gino, our bags weren't there. And so I go back to Gino, and I said, "Hey, did you put our stuff in the van?" He said, "No." So we quickly told our group, we're looking all over the place, and come to find out, someone swiped our bags. And I was super upset at the situation, at why would I need my things on the sand while I'm in the water? Why didn't I just leave it in the van? That's mistake number 1 for me and him. But we're quickly looking around. When was this taken? Who took it? We walk out to where our car was, not too far away, and there was already a police officer there. What happened was this ice cream van with really loud, obnoxious announcements in Spanish about come and get your ice cream. The ice cream guy, he was just sitting there the whole time, had seen someone take it. He called the cops right away, and then the cops were already there once we arrived at our car. And that I'm gonna kind of communicate a lot of praises in the midst of this trial. One of them is calling the police in maybe in that area or in Puerto Rico. Like the likelihood of them coming in a quick amount of time is very low. And so maybe he had been there for a couple minutes, but we were thanking God that the ice cream van guy called the police. So he was there. We told him, what was stolen, our bags. In my bag, it was my phone, my wallet, my keys, my Bible that I had for 17 years. All of my things were in there, and I just felt completely defeated. Gino, he had similar things in there. He had his passport, his Coast Guard military ID. So we had all of our belongings in our bags, and we felt super defeated. The next things that happened were really, I think, just God showing us that He's in control, that we put a lot of stock in our own materials, things that we have. And so there, when the police was there, the policeman was there taking down our report about the belongings that were in there. He goes he hops on his motorcycle to the spot where he said that they normally hide out. Nobody was there. What I was trying to do with my iPhone was use someone else's iPhone to be able to track where it is, and they had turned it off right away. Turned the iPhone off right away. And so it felt hopeless. What was super cool was Pastor Jared and his wife Viviana. Their immediate response was prayer. As soon as we found out it was taken, those things were taken. Their response when the policeman was there was, "Can we pray for you?" And we prayed for that policeman. When we left the beach, me and Gino, we're on one of their phones calling our wives and canceling cards and reporting things stolen. It was crazy. One thing we were thinking about was that was a Thursday, and we were flying out back home on Friday. And so how do you fly out of an airport without ID? So my coworkers back home, they called TSA and to figure out what kind of documentation do we need when we don't have documentation. And they said, have a copy of your passport and a utility bill would be sufficient. And so Katrina, she emailed me those two things, which I sent to Pastor Jared, which he was able to print out and bring to me the next morning. Gino's wife emailed him his documentation. We also had the police report number from the theft. We were told that those things would be sufficient for leaving Puerto Rico in the airport. Friday morning, when Pastor Jared picks us up, or he brings us breakfast and brings us our printouts of those documents. He also brought each me and Gino $60 cash, and that was one thing that I was worried about. One thing for me is in Portland, Oregon, I parked my truck in the airport parking, and I needed to pay $48 to get it out of there. How do I pay for parking when I don't have cash or cards? Pastor Jared gave us $60 each. I had $12 for a day of travel, food in airports through layovers and everything. When he put that $60 on the counter, we were just blown away. We had just been talking about it, and he, through a demonstration of humility, wanting to bless us, Christ's love, wanted to supply us with what he thought a need was. And it was, for me, it was an exact need. That was amazing. So then his senior pastor, Pastor Paul, picks us up, and he picks us up to take us to lunch and then to go to the airport. Well, Pastor Paul was going to be there to help us call the Arecibo Police Department to actually get more information and a legitimate police report number that the TSA would need. And they said that's all we would need for the exit of the airport. So when he was talking with the agent on the phone, we got the police report number. He took our home addresses in case anything was found. And then he also said, I'm not going to report this as stolen because that's a different department than mine and it could take a week or more to get in process. I'm going to report it as missing, and I can stay your agent in charge of this report, and it will be dealt with immediately, and I'll be at the front lines for you. So we were super grateful for that. We go to lunch with Pastor Paul, and really through all these, through the time spent with people of the church, through the theft, we totally saw God's hand in all of it. And we experienced a love. Me and Gino, afterwards talking, that we experienced a love that we wouldn't maybe have witnessed otherwise. So we get to the airport. Pastor Paul drops us off. Gino and I, we go to the front of TSA, wondering what, in the security line, wondering what we're going to do when we have a printout of my passport, a printout of a utility bill, and a handwritten police report number on a piece of paper. And so we get to the front of the line, and where they scan your ID or passport or whatever. We get to the front of the line, and Gino's first, and he says, we just had our backpack stolen yesterday with all of our things in there for documentation. This is what we have. And the TSA person looks at it, looks at us, and he says, would you step to the side here? It's going to be a while. And so we're like, okay, we showed up a little early, knowing that maybe something was going to happen, but we got to catch a flight. And he said, well, it's going to be a while. We're going to have you fill out a form, run a background check on you. So just sit tight. So what in the world? So the head of TSA comes over. He looks at our stuff and he says, okay, what I want you to do is go over to your airline counter and print out your itinerary. All of our flight information from incoming and departure into Puerto Rico and out of Puerto Rico. And then meet me right back here. So we went and did that. And when we got back to the TSA area, the head of TSA escorted us to the front of a new security line, where you walk through that metal detector thing. We put our bags on the belt and walked through the metal detector, and they looked at our bags. They like wiped them with that sheet of something or other, looking for whatever. And then they brought our bags back and said, "You're good to go. Have a safe trip. Don't go outside." And so we look at each other and we go, "Wait, that's it?" So what we thought was going to be like an hour plus actually turned into 5 minutes. So we're just dumbfounded at how this is all played out. So we get into the terminal and we think, wait, how are we going to let our wives know that this is favorable for us, that we got through security? So Gino, he says, "Let's get some coffee from Starbucks and then ask if we can use their phone to call our wives." So I'm like, okay, let's do that. So we get coffee. An employee lets us use their cell phone. Gino calls his wife. I call Katrina, my wife, and of course Katrina has all the questions. "Wait, how are you gonna? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna eat? You don't have any money." I said, "Yes, they gave us cash. I'm gonna be able to do it just fine." And so we're sitting by the gate, just thinking about all of the provisions that God made when we thought our situation was hopeless. One thing that I was thinking about the night before was so I had parked my truck up at the Portland airport. Well, in my bag that was stolen, my keys were in the bag. We have some spare keys where we live in Salem, and so a friend of mine, children's pastor at a church in Corvallis, was already going up to Portland to pick someone up. So I asked him, "Can you get my keys from my wife, bring them up to the airport, leave them in the bumper of the truck so that I can get home?" And he was super nice and readily available, wanting to do that. So I had that taken care of. I had the $60 cash to cover the parking fee, and even getting some dinner in during my layover I had in Chicago for 3 hours. I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have any books. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have anything to write with. And so, well, actually I did have something to write with. So someone gave me a pen. So I picked up one of those free magazines and I played my first game of Sudoku, the easy version, and that took me a long time to complete. Got on the plane in Chicago to go to Portland. Got back, landed into Portland at about midnight or later. Got to my truck, keys were in the bumper. Driving home, finally got into bed at home around 2 a.m. And one of the reasons why I share this entire story really is because God was in control the whole time. You know, I think about how I can do a really good job making plans and making sure all of the things are checked off and smooth sailing. I can do that. But if I'm not following after God's heart, if we're not following after God's heart, our plans that we make, they're pointless. And so I think it was really God teaching us reliance on Him, and also showing us more and more of the love of that church, the staff, the people, the families, that maybe we wouldn't have been able to see or take part in had this not happened. Now, a couple weeks after the trip, now talking like beginning of December, mid-December or something, Gino calls me. He lives near Seattle, and he calls me and he says, "You never guess what showed up at my door on my doorstep." I'm like, "What showed up on your doorstep?" So he, we're FaceTiming on a phone that I got replaced for free. That's a amazing God story too. So we're FaceTiming, and he turns the camera around, and I see on his kitchen counter my Bible, the book that I had just finished, my keys, all of the cards that were in my wallet, all of the, non-valuable stuff were sent from the Arecibo Police Department to Gino. How? We're not quite sure because it says 0 postage on it. Not sure how that worked out. So like not our phone or any cash that was in there or our actual backpacks. But like you can see here, all of my keys, I've got a lot of keys. All of my keys are back. I was in the process of getting new keys made for everything. My Bible that I've had for 17 years, notes from how many years of sports camp that I've been doing, the Bible stories that I teach there and at church, and my own personal notes, highlights, circles, all of those stars and everything. That, to be honest, the biggest thing that the saddest thing was my Bible. That, I can replace a phone, I can get new copies of keys made, I can cancel cards and get new ones, I can get a new backpack, but the real sentimental value was my Bible. And then just a couple days ago, it was returned to me. One sad thing as part of it, the box when it arrived to Gino's house was for some reason soaking wet. Maybe it was really raining in the process of shipping or something, and so my Bible and the book that I had just finished reading is just very moldy. So I have it, and I was really taught, and my family was really taught a lot about reliance on Christ and what that looks like. So this video was all about Puerto Rico. Now maybe what I haven't addressed is, what is the team from Biola University going to do when they're there? They'll be there the first 10 days of January. They're going to run training sessions with some church leadership and youth on how to share your faith, how to share the gospel, how to share your testimony, starting spiritual conversations, what it means to be a Christian leader, those kinds of things. They're going to run a few different sports camps with the youth from the church for kids in their community. They're going to visit some elderly homes that are supported by the church, and really invest in the lives and the families of the church, because that's what we're about. Investing in what's already going on and not coming into a situation, a country, a church, a people, and thinking that we have it all together. You need what we have to offer. But rather, going into it, what do you need us for? What would be beneficial? And to know those two things from Pastor Jared, evangelism and outreach, that was super specific about what they wanted us to help them get started in. This is the piece of our ministry that I don't get to play a whole lot, play a big part in the international side of things, because I'm mainly on the sports ministry, sports camp side, domestically. But it was fun to be able to have that experience, even with the theft of my bag and all the stuff in it. It was eye-opening, learned a lot. I missed my family during those couple nights, but I'm glad to be home. Thank you for praying. Thank you for watching if you've reached the end of this really long video. Thanks for all that you do. We love you. Our family loves you. Merry Christmas.